Welcome to Backstage with Becca B, with special guest Natalie Lander. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, she placed 5th in Legally Blonde's The Musical Search for Elle Woods competition, and has since had a successful TV and film career in Los Angeles playing roles such as Debbie on ABC's The Middle. She's also starred in 4 different UMPO series shows at Rockwell Table Stage. Please welcome Natalie Lander. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And I'm with family right now, so I left LA about, how many months ago? 4 months ago.
Okay.
And I don't know when I'm coming back, but.
Yeah. I don't blame you so are you on the East Coast?
I'm in the South. I'm in Dallas, Texas right now.
Oh, you're in Texas. Okay. Got it. Oh, that's cool. It's still probably so much better to be with your family than be stuck in LA doing nothing.
Yeah, it was at the beginning of this whole thing, I had someone come over because I was by myself and I was going through it.
Yeah.
So one of my family friends came over and was like, "Hey, just stay with us until you can go back to Texas." And that worked out. But then I went back. As soon as flights opened up to go back to Texas, I was like, "Okay, I'm going back."
You're like, see ya.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta go back, and because everything's unknown right now. But yeah.
I know. It's crazy. I can't believe it's already October, almost October. And I just feel like in March, because my birthday's in March, and so September is my half birthday. Not that I really ever celebrate that, but I still was like, oh, by September, 6 months, we'll be way out of this. And I'm like, no, we're worse actually.
Well, we thought by April, May, I think, that we were supposed to be back to normal.
I know. Ugh, it's crazy. Well, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for coming on this with me to talk. It's my new little series that I've been doing for since July, and kind of not new anymore, but it's been fun.
That's awesome. I think it's so awesome that you're doing this. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And I have a ton of questions, so I'll get started with some questions about theater and entertainment and all that stuff.
Okay, cool.
So when was the first time you knew that you wanted to be an actress and perform or be on stage, be on TV, be in film?
I have 2 kind of specific memories. Well, when I was a kid, my dad was an actor and he was on Laverne and Shirley. And so I always grew up watching him and thinking he was the funniest guy ever. And so I don't even really remember a time in my life where I was like, oh, I want to be an actor. It was just sort of I was born thinking that. But I remember the first time I ever felt funny was when I was 10. We took a trip to Washington, D.C., and we went to this dinner with a bunch of adults, and I'm an only child, so I was used to being around adults. And I just remembered I had this table of 10 adults just cracking up. I was talking about this boy who I thought was kind of gross and all these things, and I just had them eating out of the palm of my hand. And I remember feeling that was the first time I felt funny, and I thought, oh, this is good. I remember being I like this.
Yes.
I was doomed from then on.
You're I'm gonna perform, I'm gonna do something that involves acting.
And maybe I peaked when I was 10, and that dinner was it. That was my hosting of the Oscars. That was it. And I'll never live up to that. I don't know.
I mean, I think you've lived up. I think you've lived up to it since on stage.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. So since you've done theater in LA and you did the Legally Blonde competition, when was the first time that you really got involved with anything theater?
So when I was growing up, I used to beg my parents every day to let me be a TV actor. And they were very adamant. It wasn't that they weren't supportive, but they just didn't want me to pursue acting as like a child actor. And so their sort of consolation prize, as you would say, was like, well, we won't let you like go on TV auditions, but how about you try theater? And that's when I started getting involved in these musical theater camps in LA as a kid. And so that's where I started, was like, you know, where you pay and everyone gets a part and it's like quadruple cast and like, but I remember really feeling involved, and I think that's like where I got a lot of my, you know, I did a lot of learning on like professionalism and knowing your lines and all these things. And so that's where I started. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't necessarily like professional children's theater, but that's where I started my love of theater. And my dad, who's a very big influence on my life, he also really exposed me a lot to musical theater. So, you know, most kids growing up were listening to New Kids on the Block, and I was like obsessed with the CD from Candide. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yes.
My dad and I would like listen to Candide over and over again. And I was like, one day I'll sing Glitter and be gay. And, you know, so that's kind of where I started, was like, my parents were like allowing me, the way to perform was theater.
Okay, that makes sense. So, do you remember the first theater show you ever saw, whether it was professional or whether it was just like a community theater?
Yeah, so the first, I don't really remember this, but the first show I actually saw was Cats when I was 5.
That's becoming common.
Yeah. And my parents said that when I saw, you know, the sets, the trash heap, and when I saw the set, I said, boy, these cats are dirty. And they were like, I thought they were very messy for cats.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a trash heap. And then I wound up, the first show I remember seeing, and I think I was like 7, was Les Mis. And I remember sitting in like the 5th row in the center and just, you know, not being able to like take my eyes off this theater masterpiece. So Les Mis was like the first one. And, you know, obviously there's Cosette. And so I saw little Cosette and I was like, and then I saw, you know, like who sings, what's his name? Who sings Little People?
Oh, wait. Gavroche.
Gavroche. And he sings Little People. And I was just like, that song's for me. Like,
Yes. Yes, I remember listening to Broadway Kids albums when I was like 4 or 5 and hearing Castle on a Cloud and Little People. And that was it for me. I was like, okay, I love theater.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, it's funny now. I've seen Les Mis as an adult, and I'm like, whoa, what a downer. I can't believe as a 7-year-old, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's so heartbreaking, but it's like it's a spectacle. So it's like when you see it on stage, you're like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I really I remember seeing that and just being like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yes. So then, what was the first theater show as a child that you participated in?
Oh, my first theater show was Peter Pan.
Yes.
And I remember I've always been one to not really follow like the rules of things, which I don't know if that's benefited me. I mean, I follow rules of like safety, but like theater things, like for example, when for Peter Pan, when I went to go audition, it's the kids camp where everyone gets a part. I really wanted to be Tinkerbell. And
Love that.
Tinkerbell was played by a flashlight, you know.
So you're going with the flashlight, obviously.
So it was like, my competition was a flashlight. But I remember they told me, like, oh, you know, you can't audition for Tinkerbell. Like, there's no one plays Tinkerbell. And I was like, no, I'm still going to audition for Tinkerbell. And I fully came to my first audition. I'll never forget. I went in and I wore bells all over me. So I was like jingling down the aisle to go sing on the stage. And I was fully like, I'm auditioning for Tinkerbell. And they were like, actually, you're not. And I'm like, cool, well, I am. And they were like, but you're not. And so I didn't get Tinkerbell because it was a flashlight. And I wound up getting cast as Michael. I got cast as Michael.
Yeah. I mean, it works.
It worked.
Also, it's a little disappointing, but
yeah, I was definitely. They changed it to a girl. They called her Michelle.
Oh.
And yeah,
That's
I remember. You know, it was. Yeah, it felt like difference. It wasn't fully Tinkerbell, but it was a fun part to play. And I remember I counted my lines, and I had 35 lines.
You're like, okay, this worked.
Yeah. Okay, fine. 35 lines. I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not Tinkerbell, I'll take it.
It's not Tinkerbell, but fine.
Is there like an audition tape anywhere of that moment? Because I feel like that would be like amazing if it like surfaced somewhere.
Oh, I wish. No, you know, it was like the 90s. So it was like before that. It was before video. No, I'm kidding. It was.
If your parents have it somewhere, find it somewhere and let me know. Post it somewhere.
I definitely have a video of me playing Michelle somewhere that I can find. I have to find it on a VHS.
Yes, they're all on VHS.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are VHSs? People
I know.
Ask. Yeah. I can't even find things to play a VHS on these days, which is crazy.
I know. It's scary because I feel like I have a lot of my childhood on VHS tape. Will I ever be able to get it off? I don't know.
No, I mean, my mom could take it off for you.
Oh,
she's been doing that for me. She's been doing that for me. So
okay,
every time I come home, she's like, I put this on DVD for you. I'm like, great, thanks, Mom.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna send. All of a sudden, she gets like a crate of like 100 tapes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this was expected. I know.
Yeah. Don't worry, we worked out a deal.
we worked this out. So then, did you do theater for a good amount of time following that, or when did you start getting into TV film acting? Because you've done a lot of that too.
So I did theater. My first like equity show, but I didn't get my equity card from it because it was just like it was like, you know, they offer 3 equity contracts and then I was one of the non-union ones. So when I was 17, but my first like professional community theater was Fiddler on the Roof when I was 17. And I played Hava. And I remember that was like a really big deal because everyone was in their 20s.
Yeah, that seems young.
I know, and I felt like so cool. And I'm still friends with people from that show to this day. And yeah, and that was out in Thousand Oaks at the Civic Arts Plaza, which was the Caprio Music Theater, but it's now called 5 Star Theatricals, and they're still, you know, doing shows. So that was my first like professional show. And then I didn't really do shows at my high school. I was like in drama club and I did things, but I wasn't like in the main stage shows. I just wasn't really into that. But then I wound up, when I went to college, I was a theater major and I went to Pepperdine. And then when I graduated college was when I started to pursue TV and film. So I waited until I was done with school.
Okay. But you've still, like, while doing TV and film, it feels like you still did a little bit of theater, or no? Because, like, at Rockwell, whenever you started Rockwell, like, you seemed like you had done it consistently. So,
You know, it's funny, like, so I was, you know, I would do like little shows here and there, but like before I really found Rockwell, which is like such a gift. That place is such a gift in, you know, my life, so many people's lives. I kind of had like let the theater thing fall to the wayside a little bit.
okay.
Yeah, and so I think when I had done Rockwell, my first show I did was in 2017, and I think I hadn't done a live theater show since like 2011.
Wow.
Let alone a musical. Like, I think I had
Yeah.
done like a little like play or one act thing, but like, yeah, I really kind of was like, oh, yeah.
No one would ever know that.
Oh, yeah, I definitely was like, so when I first came to Rockwell, I was like so intimidated because everyone's like ridiculously talented. And I'm like, I remember seeing one of the shows there and being like, I want to be in this so badly, but I don't think I have the chops. But then I was like, oh, I'll just try.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get back into Rockwell later.
Okay, we'll pause.
Yeah. But you competed in the Legally Blonde talent search, and you placed 5th in that. So how was competing in something that was like publicized live on TV? What was that whole experience like?
I mean, it's so interesting. Like, I have like 3 perspectives on it, I feel like. Like, the perspective of like when you're in it is like, this is life or death. Like, if I do not get this, like, I will die. Like, that's how dramatic it was. Now, then the perspective of like when I first got off the show and it started to air, I was like, the phone's gonna start to ring off the hook.
Yeah.
And now here we are 12 years later, and I was like, oh, that was basically like I did a show and it ended and that was it, kind of a thing. So it's interesting how, you know, I think there's like 3 phases of what it was. I think I really believed that like even if I didn't win this show, like this would kind of launch my career. And it didn't, for probably the best reasons ever, because I don't know if I'd want that being like, oh, and she's known for this thing. I think it's fun that like people who know the reality show are like, you know, secret super fans of it, you know, and I think that's really fun. But yeah, I'm like, oh, maybe it's for the best that I'm not like MTV Legally Blonde, the search for Elle Woods, Natalie, you know, like, but while I was going through it, it was like so intense, you know. They really, you know, the producer, I think what it was it's first a reality show, it was second an audition.
Yeah.
And it was, so we really went on the show being like, we're auditioning for this, which we really were, but the priority was the reality TV of it, and that was the producer's priority. So there was a lot of like, kind of like mind games going on, you know, like you would go to an audition and like, right before you went on stage, like a producer would be interviewing you and they're like, how do you feel about your audition? And I'm like, I'm feeling really confident. And they're like, oh, really? You are? You're like, yeah. Are you sure? Because, you know, last time I think like you were struggling in the rehearsal and like seemed like, you know what I mean? They start putting these like little seeds of doubt in your brain, and you're like, oh. And they're like, and what are you gonna do if you get kicked off after this? I mean, what are you gonna do? You know, and you're like, oh, I don't know, crawl in a hole and die. Like, that's literally like how dramatic.
What? It's like you start having a panic attack mid confidently answering questions because they're like putting all these spins on it.
Exactly. It's like, it's not a healthy way. Like, auditioning is already like mentally probably unhealthy for anyone. This is like extra unhealthy.
Yeah. And speaking of auditioning, because I've talked a lot about auditioning on this and about like the no's and that everyone gets and how much you have to build up your self-confidence for it. What tips would you give to someone auditioning for anything in the entertainment industry?
I guess, like, you know, if you can really train yourself to let it go and not take it personally, I mean, I think that is a really hard thing to learn and a really hard skill to hone. I know I'm still struggling with that. I've gotten better as I've gotten older because everything kind of has less like huge weight. And maybe it's just because I'm, you know, bitter and jaded. I don't know.
You've just learned.
But, you know, I think like, I've just learned it's not being big. The stakes feel so high, and like, but also I've been on the other side of casting things, and you realize that like it is so subjective at the end of the day. Like, you just got to learn how to like let it roll off your back and be like, all right, I did this, on to the next, you know, and let it go and not take it so personally. And like, I do feel like in the past I was very like, I would mourn the loss of a role every time. And then I'm like, but I'm not really losing anything because I never had it, you know? So it's like, stop torturing. You don't need to torture yourself. Is basically the point of that, I think.
Yes. It's like don't overthink about it.
Yeah. And also like, and I think a lot of actors say this is like, have other things in your life that you care about and that make you feel of value, because you can't let this arbitrary business define your value as a human, you know? And it's really hard not to let your value get wrapped up in those things. I mean, even like anyone, you know, we always want to feel like we're a winner, you know, and we're excelling. So I think it's normal to sort of get wrapped up like that. But it, you know, if you can stop yourself before, you know, I usually give myself like a couple hours of a pity party and then we're done. Like, I'm like, whatever.
Then cut it off.
Yeah. Then it's like, you're done.
You're like,
but
no.
you know, some hurt more than others. And like, I have auditions that I didn't get 10 years ago and I'm still pissed about. And I'm like, whoa, Natalie.
Calm down. Calm down. You're like things happen for a reason.
Exactly.
Mindset.
Exactly.
Yes. And then going back to Legally Blonde competition, it's still talked about, at least in theater communities, so much to this day, I feel like. Especially in the past couple of months, I've seen a lot about it, and there's a reunion recently. So what do you think made that competition something that, I mean, entertains the theater community so well?
I think a couple factors, definitely. And it's really funny that it's gotten this sort of like resurgence during the pandemic, because I think people are just hard up for entertainment. And, you know, it's funny in a weird way. It's like a period piece without, like, I feel like we don't think of time, like, we don't think of like 2014 as like another period in time. We think of it as like, you know, 6 years ago. But when you think about the difference between like 2008, which was when this show was, and now, it's like crazy. I mean, when I was on the show, I had a BlackBerry Pearl. Like, it was like such a different time, we didn't have Instagram. Facebook was like kind of a thing, but like it wasn't a thing. You know, you didn't have like a Facebook fan page at that time. You were just like on Facebook. Like it was just such a different time. And I think like what's fun about it is kind of when you watch it, like how bizarrely dated it is, and how ridiculous it is. Like, you know, I think like people, especially working theater people and in the industry, like I think they watch those like challenges we have and they're like, they're so ridiculous. Like it's just like not real life at all. You know, I wonder if an audience, like if this show was on today, like I don't think an audience would buy it. Like I think they'd be like, that doesn't happen. Like, you know, we'd probably want to watch something closer to like, you know, American Idol and things like that. But yeah, it's so weirdly dated.
But you never know during this pandemic right now.
It's true. I mean, the pandemic is like, people are like all about it.
Yeah, people would probably watch something like that if it were airing right now, like in this specific time.
That's true.
And then, do you still like keep up with the people who were in the competition with you? Because there was, as I mentioned, there was a reunion concert.
Yes.
So I assume that you'll still talk, probably, at least some of you.
Yeah, so we let's see. I've stayed in touch pretty much with everyone. No one's like excommunicated or in a fight or anything like that. A couple of them I've like been very, very close with. Actually Cassie S. She's like one of my best friends. And we, you know, she was at my wedding, like all these things. Like she's like we're super close friends. And same with Lena Hall, who, or at the time was Selena Carvajal. And Selena's like one of my very close friends. Like when she was here doing the Hedwig tour, she lived with me and my husband for 2 months. And so I would say like of all the girls, like those are the two that I had consistently stayed in touch with. But I would say like, you know, anytime I go to New York, I'm always like, I email the group and I'm like, I'm in town if anyone wants to hang. And, you know, I'll see like a handful of them. And sometimes when they're in LA, I'll see them. But Cassie now lives in LA, so she's the one I see the most.
Yeah.
Oh, and Rhiannon. Oh my God, Rhiannon lives in LA too, and I've seen her. She's got 2 kids, so she's really busy.
Yeah.
But I see her. We see each other a couple times a year.
But it's cool knowing that like that a show that's essentially a competition like that forms bonds and friendships that like last a lifetime. Like I feel like that's cool for people who watched religiously back in the day to like know to this day.
Exactly. I know. And I think, you know, that's why the show, you know, the producers really wanted drama from all of us. And what I think they forget is that like we all like grew up working in theater, and like, yes, like sometimes you know your competition, but like at the end of the day, we were like an ensemble and we were all like a cast supporting each other. And so they didn't really get the drama out of us because we're like, oh, we're used to like, you know, being theater people, and we were like always around each other and supporting each other, you know?
You're like, we're friends. We're cheering each other on.
Yeah, it's like we're kind of in this cast and we're gonna support each other, and that's it.
Like we want all of us to win or to tie.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's kind of how everyone felt, was that we knew that like there could only be like one winner, but we did feel like at the end of the day, like this was going to be great for everyone.
Yeah. And then what's the most valuable takeaway you learned from that competition?
I think I recently learned this because I rewatched a lot of the show, because actually randomly before the pandemic, I started writing a one-woman show about being on the show, because I found my journals from the show, and they are so stupid.
Love that.
So I started to rewatch it, and I think what I was watching, the Natalie that I saw on that show, like, wasn't me. And I think what I really learned is, like, don't try to be what you think other people want you to be. Just be yourself. And just be authentic, you know? Because I think what I was trying to do was I was trying to be like the perfect reality show contestant. I was so afraid of, you know, saying something stupid or something that they would edit. I was so afraid that they were going to, like, edit me into being like a shitty person. Oh, sorry. Are we allowed to cuss on here?
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Like, edit me into being some, like, awful human. And, you know, so I was I could really see myself, like, in my interviews, like, I was kind of like a little bit of a robot. And so I think my biggest takeaway for me personally is just, like, yeah, don't try to be something you think other people want you to be. Don't put yourself in a box to, like, fit. Like, go audition for fucking Tinkerbell when there's no Tinkerbell. Like, you know, like, I want to go back to that Natalie who was like, I'm wearing bells to this audition. Like, yes. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you guys. So that's my biggest learning lesson, I think.
But it's like it was probably had to do with, like, your what you had seen on reality TV in the past. You were probably like, I have to be exactly like that. So it's like,
exactly. And before you go on a reality show, everyone's like, whatever you do, don't talk shit about other people. They're gonna turn you into the villain and blah 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 blah. And, like, and so you're kind of like in there, like, and don't cry. And, like, you're like, oh my god. And then, you know, so I when I watch it, I can see, like, this, like, very small version of myself. So anyway, but it's okay. I was protecting myself. Like, I can really see how it was, like, putting up a wall.
And how old were you at the time? Because
I'm old now.
Yeah, how old were you at the time? Because I was young.
I was 24. I was 24.
Yeah, that's tough age.
Yeah. And I turned 25. Like, we shot it in the month of March of 2008. And I went as a 24-year-old. And when I got back, I turned 28.
Wow.
I aged 2 years right there. It was insane. No, I had my birthday when I got back from the show.
Yeah, that's already a tough age. That's like a second high school age.
It's true. And when you're 24, like, I really thought I was a grown up. And now I'm 37 and I'm like, I still don't feel like a grown up.
Good to know.
Yeah, just so you know, you never really feel like you're like, I have it all figured out.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything figured out.
And you look so young. So I feel like you and I drank the same juice and made the same deal with the devil.
Probably. Somewhere along the way. I don't know what deal, but. And then you've also done several, I'll get back into theater, but you've also done several TV shows, and you had a recurring role on The Middle, obviously, and you've done film and all that in Hollywood. So how did you get into TV and film and become, I would say, pretty dang successful in it?
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. 'Cause, you know, I never feel like I'm doing enough or I've done enough or I'm successful, which is something I'm working on. It's something I'm working on. But yeah, you know, when I got out of college, it wasn't, you know, okay. So when I got out of college, okay, sorry, I'm like really all over this. Here we go. I was really determined when I got out of college that I was going to be a working actor. And I, like, put it out there and I was, like, manifesting the crap out of it, whole thing. Sure enough, I had gotten a manager before I graduated college, like in my last semester, my parents were like, okay, fine, you can start, but like it cannot derail you from school. And so I wound up auditioning for this movie with Hillary and Haley Duff called Material Girls. And I graduated in April, and my auditions were like in the beginning of April. And I wound up like going in for like one role that was like their friend, and then like I didn't get it, and then they called me in for like this other role of like this receptionist girl, and then I didn't get that. And then I went in for this role that was named actress / model / whatever. And I remember I went in, and I remember being like, well, they brought me in 3 times. They must want to hire me, which is like such a funny, like naive, like greatly naive thing, because like now I wouldn't think that way. But I think that's what got me the part, is I was like, oh, you guys are trying to find a part for me. Okay, let's do this one. And so I wound up getting cast in that. I found out the day before I graduated that I got that part. And so to me, I was like, this is it. I'm graduating college, and I'm a working actress, which was very true. But I also thought it was that easy. And so I was kind of in for like a bit of a rude awakening, where it took me so I graduated college in 2005, and I didn't get another TV job. And it was like the next job I got was like a digital series for Warner Brothers. And that took me 5 years to get to that.
But still,
it took a long time but I think I had this sort of like expectation where I was like, oh, this is so easy. So unfortunately what happened, well, I guess I did Legally Blonde in 2008. So I'm kind of lying, but what I consider like my next acting job was like this show called Aim High, which actually wound up being like a huge part of my life. I met like some of my best friends doing that, and it was like my first recurring job, and it was like, you know, a big set or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't like network TV, it was like a bigger production. And so, but it took a long time. Like I remember when I got out of college, and now this would never happen today, because we live in just such a better, more open-minded world, but I was a little heavy when I got out of school, as anyone is when they're in school, and then also like you're young and, you know, baby weight, and, you know, like you have all, you know, like a thing. So but I didn't know, because I, you know, was in college, so like we all kind of looked a little fluffy, you know. And I'll never forget, I went in, now for that, from like 2005 to 2010, I was like going in for like the hugest stuff. And like at the time I had no idea. But I remember I went in for the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And I went in for the role that Jordana Brewster wound up getting. Because clearly, I mean, same type. And it was like, I was 22, and I remember reading the script and being like, ooh, it's a horror film, and she's like edgy and like fighting for her life. I'm gonna wear a wife beater. Like that was what my brain was like envisioning. And I wore this like wife beater and a black bra, because I just didn't know any better. And horrible like low-waisted jeans. Definitely had like a major muffin top. Just didn't know any better.
I mean,
it was adorably naive. And then I went to the audition, and I remember thinking I nailed it. And then what I thought at the time was, oh, actresses go to auditions, and then they drive to their manager's office to tell them in person how they did on the audition. And so I drove to my manager's office.
Not at all.
What?
I'm assuming that's not at all supposed to happen.
No, it's like, no. I mean, especially now with everything on email, like you just like, you don't even like, now I don't even tell anyone how I did. And so if I get a call back, that's all the feedback I need, you know? Or if I get the job, you know? And so I'll never forget, I walked into his office, and I'm like, hey, and he's like, hi, like, what are you doing here? I'm like, just finished the audition for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Felt amazing. And he was like, great, yeah. I'm like, so you'll probably be getting a phone call later. And he's like, okay, cool. And I'll never forget. And he was like, okay, so that's great, but when are you gonna get rid of this? And he reached out and he touched my belly.
Oh,
and
what?
Yeah. And I was like, oh no, I don't know. Yeah, I'm working on it. Like, you know, I just got done with school and all this stuff. And it was like the first time where like, and I feel like I specifically remember being like, oh, I'm not like Hollywood or something. And I remember that really like sticking with me. And then I walked to my car sobbing on the phone to my mom. And then I got on Jenny Craig.
But what?
Anyway, that was a long tangent and kind of a tragic story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, I'm not saying I'm blaming that manager at all, but like, I think that was a really informative time where it kind of like it was like the first time I didn't feel invincible. And I think from that moment on, like, I like adopted this very kind of like low self-worth attitude. And so it took me like a long time to shake that. And I think that's what took me so long to start working regularly. And it really wasn't until like my first guest star I've ever booked was when I was 28, and it was The Middle. And it was my first guest star, and it was supposed to be one episode, and it turned into a recurring guest star. And that was sort of like the beginning of like, oh, like I'm now I'm a working actor. But it took me a long time. Like I don't know.
Wow.
So it's never felt like, oh, it happens so easily. You know, which is interesting. I think it's important to like share those stories with other actors because, you know, we see things on social media and online and everything looks like, oh, that it just happens. And like, it, you know, it kind of doesn't. it does for some people, but for most, it's you're in it for the marathon, you know?
Yeah, like some people get lucky, but a lot of people have to really, really, really work at this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, to an extent, like the people who we know from Rockwell who are starting to get like Broadway shows, who people are like, oh, well, like that probably happened overnight for them. And it's like, no, we've been watching them on like LA stages for like years and years.
Yeah, you're like, no, they've been singing in bars with rat traps.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's so true. You know, it's so true. It's like, and everyone's like, what I'm trying to remind myself is, you know, as I get older is like, it's not a race. Like we're all on our own journey, and you know, there's no set deadline, you know, unless you put that on yourself.
Yeah, which we're good at doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to be working and making money, but you know.
But these days, who knows?
But these days, I don't know.
These days.
Now I'm like, with the pandemic, I'm like, oh, cool, it's not just me.
Yeah, right. I think someone else said that like last week. They were like, it's a little better. Just a little better.
Yeah, it's like even the playing field.
Yeah. So when you got the recurring role on The Middle, did you like ever expect to be in that many episodes of the show? And I mean, did that essentially, how long after getting that did it essentially take for you to like continue building your confidence back up?
So let's see, like, so I got that in September, like right around this time actually, September 2011. And, you know, I really kind of felt like, okay, like this is like the beginning. This is now. It's funny how like every time I get like a new job, I'm like, okay, this is the start now. Now we're starting. But I have to remind myself, I'm like, no, you started a long time ago and you're just like continuing, you know? So, you know, got to reframe a little. But yeah, so when I got that in 2011, and then it was funny. The casting director, G. Charles Wright, was sort of like a friend of mine at the time. Like actually, he's now one of my closest friends, but at the time, like, we were friendly because I had taken his class, and so he knew me. And when I got cast in it, he wound up sending me like an email saying, oh, actually, before I got cast in that, this is a good actory story, was he called me in for a part on the middle, and the character was like girl 1. And I was like, okay, cool, you know, but I wanted to be on the middle, so yeah. So I went in, I did it. It was like one line, and he told me in the room, he was like, great, I'm gonna bring you back to producers next week for this role. And I was like, okay, awesome. And I wound up, like, I emailed my reps, and I was like, I'm getting a call back, all this stuff. Well, the week goes by, I heard nothing. And I was like, oh my God, like, he must have watched the tape back and was like, oof, what happened? That was bad, actually. I don't know. I was under a spell in the room, and I watched it back, and Natalie was a pile of hot trash, you know? And I was like so embarrassed, and I was like I was just mortified. And then like another week goes by, and he emails me. G emails me. He goes, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. I just wanted you to know I didn't call you back for that role for Girl 1 because I felt like you were going to get it. And I was reading ahead, and there's a bunch of other roles coming up in the season that are better and bigger and better that I think you're more right for. So I'm saving you for that. And so that was like, just like one of those reminders where you're like, you know, you just never know what's going on behind the scenes. Like when you hear nothing, you're like, it could mean that they're finding something else for you. You just don't know. And then I went in for that, and I got that part, and it turned into what it did. And then, you know, I think like when I turned 30 in 2013, 2013? I don't know, 14? I don't know.
What year?
I don't know. Somewhere in there. I'm 37 now, so 7 years ago. 2013.
But, like, how?
Trust me, I have no idea. It's very confusing. Very confusing.
How old do people think you are? I just have to ask this. How old do you get?
I think now I get like late 20, like mid to late 20s,
Okay.
maybe 30.
So you don't get like 16 and 17 forever, though. Because I'm sure
No.
you're in the same predicament I'm in.
Yes. You know what? The last time I played high school was when I was 32. And the woman who played my mom was 40. And I did the math, and I was like, I'm closer to 40 now than I am to 16. And I was like, this has to stop. And that's when I retired from things. So when I was 32, I was like, I'm good with this.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like you're in the same exact predicament that I'm in with the.
I think you even look younger than I did at your age. You look younger than, because how old are you?
27.
Yeah, you look even younger than I did. I thought you were 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look so young. Do you want to pursue TV ever?
More behind the scenes. But
okay, because you got a good look, kid.
That's what I've heard. But I'm like,
I mean, people probably think you're like 15.
Yeah. But I'm sure that happens with you.
When I was 28 playing 16 on the middle, people, I was definitely like, could pass for 16, 17, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I could say it.
But now I'm like, oh. But yeah, so anyway, no more high school for me. Thank God.
You're like, I'm not doing high school anymore.
No more of that.
But
I don't know where we left off. I don't think I answered your question.
But the middle was such a good, I think somewhere in the middle. But it was like such, I mean, you were on that for forever. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like the gift that kept on giving, you know, and from 2011 to 2017, you know, I always kind of knew, I was like, yeah, I'll probably do a couple episodes of The Middle this year. And it was such like a great feeling just to know that show was going and to know that I'd probably, you know, be asked back. And, you know, when it ended, it was definitely like, it was sad to see that show go, because there is comfort, you know, so much comfort in knowing you, like, just like in the back of your head being like, I could work on something because, you know, they're bringing me back or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, how many seasons did that show run for? Because I feel like it was a long time, and it still airs on TV.
Yeah, I think it was 9 seasons.
Yeah, and that's like, most shows get like, I mean, 5 seasons max these days.
Yeah, and it's such a good show. I mean, I still like, if I see it on TV, I'll like tune in and watch it, and it's just like, it's so funny and it's just so well done.
Yes, for sure. And then, how soon after The Middle ended, or was it before The Middle ended that you discovered Rockwell?
So it was in 2016, I saw the True Beverly Hills show, and I remember I had seen some other like of the For the Record shows there a couple years before, but it had been a while. And there was something though about the UMPO series that I just was like, oh, because when I saw For the Record, I was like, wow, everyone's amazing, but like, I'm not cool enough to do shows like this. And so I was just like, whatever. And then I wound up seeing True Beverly Hills and being like, I have to do one of these. And I met Kat Tokars after the show, who was in it, and she was so sweet. And I just asked her, I go, how do people get involved in these? And she was like, well, our next one is Mean Gurlz, and I think you'd be perfect for it. She was like, give me your number and I'll text you when they announce the auditions. And I was like, okay. And then I'm thinking, she's never going to remember, like, it's October and the show doesn't start until January, like, you know. But sure enough, I wound up getting this text from her, and she was like, hey, this is Kat, like, here's the info on the auditions. And I sent in my tape, and it was due on a Thursday at like 11 in the morning. And I sent it in, and like 20 minutes later, I get an email from Kate Pizakis, who was running the Rockwell at the time. And she was like, can you come in today? We're having callbacks like now. And I was like, okay. And so I went, and I actually, what's funny is I had done my tape in the morning, so I was already dressed in the outfit I wore in the tape. So I was just like, well, I'm just gonna go. Yeah. So then I went and I met Ty Blue and Kate Pizakis. And what was funny, I pulled a Tinkerbell moment, was Ty was like, oh, we're gonna have you read for Karen. And I had it in my head like, I'm gonna be Gretchen. Like, there is no other part really for me other than that.
That was perfect.
I was like, no, I am playing Gretchen. And I remember saying to Ty, I was like, no, I'm not reading for Karen. And he was like, I'm like, oh, I prepared Gretchen. He's like, oh, okay, let's let her do it. And then that was it. They were like, oh yeah, I mean, you're gonna play Gretchen no matter what.
Yes. And you had, I mean, from being on a comedy show, I guess you were already good at the Rockwell style of improving.
I actually like had no real like training. Actually, like Rockwell kind of alerted me that like I'm an improviser. I never really thought of it. I never thought of myself as that. So all of a sudden, like, I found a new skill at Rockwell, and I was like, oh, like, I like improvising. I like creating. I mean, I think also the Rockwell, like, I had been a writer before, but I never really thought of myself as like a writer creator. And like, what's so cool about those shows is like, you kind of become all those things. You become, and it was such a valuable learning time for me.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I mean, in Mean Gurlz specifically, like, there were lots of I mean, very great improv moments that you had. Speaking of improv, what was your favorite thing to add to that show? Like your favorite scene to add to that show, or line to add to the show?
Oh, wow.
Because you cracked everyone up, like, every night. And, I mean, you made people break character from being just like you and hilarious on stage.
So I guess my favorite part, which I think is maybe the other people's favorite, was the Hanukkah song. But what's funny is how that came about during rehearsal was that basically we were doing rehearsal and Ty was like, oh, we can't do the Hanukkah. We can't do the Christmas song. It's too close to the movie.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, so what are we going to do? And they're like, let's just play like 2 seconds of Jingle Bell Rock and we'll stop it and we'll move on. And I was like, no. I'm like, no, guys, what if instead of a sexy Christmas song, I'm like, we do a sexy Hanukkah song, you know? And everyone's like, and I'm like this, Hanukkah, Hanukkah. And I like did it. And they were like, everyone's dying laughing. And they were like, nope, that's what's going to happen in the show. Like, and it was just me pitching it in rehearsal that became part of the show. And it was like exactly the way I pitched it in rehearsal, where I was like, no, guys, I have the best idea ever. And they're like, that was ridiculous. We're putting that in the show, whether you like it or not. So,
and you essentially got to write something into that show, too.
Yeah.
As you were talking about.
And it was so insane. And then, like, you know, the best was, like, Corbin, who played Regina, was so, you know, she loves to, like, dangle carrots, I feel like, and play games. And, like,
yeah.
You know, so she, like, let me go on forever. And then, like, I would, you know, and then she would just, like, let it go as a joke as long as I could, you know, basically hump the floor.
Yeah, the audience would be, like, doing, like, there would be like multiple spit takes in the audience happening.
Yeah.
I remember the first time watching it and I was like,
and then it just shows you, like, you know, what's so fun is, like, that was just me pitching something in rehearsal that was just silly, that I really was, I wasn't trying to, like, make a bit. And I think that's another thing, just like I've learned about improv over the years now, is like, you can't try to be funny. So, like, that just came out of, like, a genuine, like, place, which then made it more funny, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't, like, over trying to do anything. It was...
Right.
Yeah. Love that. And, so, you've done a lot of shows since then at Rockwell. What show has been your favorite to participate in at Rockwell?
It's so hard because it's kind of like picking your favorite child. Because I love so many of them, because they, like, give you so much freedom with your character, you know, with what you do. Like, I feel like in every show I've had, like, these moments where I'm like, this is so, like, this is just, like, this is why I do what I do, you know? I will say Bridesmaids, I think, was, you know, my favorite for so many reasons. Just, one, I loved that movie so much, and Kristen Wiig is one of my, like, favorite, like, actresses, and I think she's hilarious and amazing. And, you know, I think for me to, like, do that role at the show, and you know, what's fun about that show was, like, because, I mean, I guess Home Alone was very similar too, but, like, because I was, like, in everything, I felt like when I would start that show, I literally would just push on and, like, and it would just, like, go on the thing, you know? And it was just so, it was so fun, because I think it really just, like, utilized, if I were to pick, like, oh, if I were to say someone, like, you want to come see everything I do, come see this show, because I got to sing, I got to be funny, I got to be vulnerable, I got, you know, I think it just had, like, everything that I want to do in every role that I bring to life. Yeah,
it really showed all your skills in like, what, 2 hours?
Yeah, and it was just so fun. And then also, you know, we bonded so much as a cast. That one, I mean, I mean, I have such good friends from all the shows I've done there, which is amazing. It's such a family. And as you know, you're an adopted family member. And, but like Bridesmaids in particular, like we just had like this really special bond. And I think, it was majority of women, and it was just a really cool time. And yeah, I loved that show, but I loved Home Alone, and I loved Clueless.
Yes. All fantastic shows, and all really well done. And the audiences, like, there's something about the shows, about the musical parodies that keep the audiences, like, a ton of repeat guests coming back over and over again. What do you think that is that, like, draws crowds back and draws new people in?
I just think, like, I mean, I've sat in the audience and I've seen shows and I've obviously been in them, and like, there's just something about the way the shows are designed where I feel like as an audience member, you're like in on it with them. Like, you're like the next the audience is like also in the show. Like, I mean, obviously it's so like, you're like literally like being sat on by people in the show, and like spit on. Like, now with COVID, I'm like gross, get away from me. But like, you're literally being like, accosted by performers. But like, I think that, yeah, like as an audience member, like you just feel like you're in it with them, and like it's immersive, but it's so inclusive in like a weird way. I don't know, like it's kind of a magical thing there.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like it's something that only works at a place like Rockwell, because it's like the shows work because it's an intimate setting.
Yeah, it's true. And you can like, one of my favorite memories, I think it was in, what show was it? I think it was in, I don't remember which show it was, but I had like it probably wasn't Bridesmaid, because I had like a moment of downtime. So it wasn't Bridesmaids or Home Alone, because I think in those two shows I was never downtime.
Yeah, it was all you.
Yeah, it must have been Clueless. I don't know what it was. Anyway, one of them, I had a moment when I was off stage, and like, I know but if someone's watching this that doesn't know, like, backstage is really just like
not backstage.
On stage, you're just like, you still can be seen, and you can still see the audience, and you're still like really close to the audience. And I remember having this moment where I was watching someone watching the show, and they were so connected and in the moment watching it. Like, I looked at this person, and they were laughing, and they were like listening, and they were just taking it all in. And I was like looking at this person, I was like, I don't know what this person's life is, but right at this moment, I'm gonna cry now. This always makes me cry. But in this moment, like, they're just experiencing pure joy. I'm crying.
Yeah.
This is insane.
No, that's making me cry too.
And like, when I saw that, I'm like, this isn't why you have to do these things, because it's just like this one moment in time where people aren't, in pain or experiencing their life. And I just was like, I am part of this joy. Like, it's amazing. I mean, it's like, obviously I'm a crazy person because I'm crying right now.
No, it's making me cry too.
But
I get it.
That feeling, and like, and I was watching this person, and I started to cry watching them off stage, and I'm like, this is insane. But like, it was just this moment where I was like, because sometimes I feel like, oh, am I an actor and I'm just like the most selfish person on the planet? Like, am I just doing this for my own ego because I just want attention or whatever? And then when I have a moment like that, I'm like, no, I'm like, this is healing for them, for me. This is like the most human experience we could ever have. And like, yeah. it's just so cool.
It's an escape. I mean, why people go to any theater show to get to enjoy their night, afternoon, anything.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's like, we don't know where everyone goes after they leave, but like, you know I go home to my own cluster of things that I perceive as problems or pain or whatever. And like, but when I'm at Rockwell, none of it exists. I'm just pure happiness. Or when I'm working on a show or on set, like, it's just like, it doesn't exist in that moment. And it's so amazing. And it's also for the audience, and it's also for the performer. And it's really special. That's the time when I'm like, oh, that's why I do it. I'm not a total asshole.
You played a lot of iconic roles in Rockwell shows that are like, that people love from movies, and like roles that you yourself love, as you mentioned, Bridesmaids wise. How do you make characters that are so iconic, like whether it was Gretchen in Mean Gurlz, Ty, etc., or your own in a way, and make them still lovable?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I think like I approach it from like, because I think every character that I have played at Rockwell thus far, I've been a fan of every single character and movie. So like, I think I first come from like a place of fandom where I'm like, I want to do it I want to do these characters justice as a fan of them. And then what's fun is then like starting from that point and then bringing in my own kind of fan interpretation of what they are. So they're not just like me trying to copy, you know, Lacey Chabot's performance or Brittany Murphy's performance. It's like, this is the Natalie version. But I think the baseline is that I am a huge fan and I respect and honor their original performance, kind of a thing.
That definitely helps. And the fact that you're a fan of the movies, it's like, yeah, I want to do this justice.
Exactly. I want to bring it to life, and I want someone who is also a fan to come and be like, yes, you know, that satisfied their fan itch.
And Lacey did come to Mean Gurlz, right?
She did.
What did she have to say after, like, about your performance as Gretchen?
I don't remember. I feel like I probably was just like, I was probably pretty intimidated by, I remember being a little like nervous about it, because like, I'm like, what would that be like to come and see this thing that you did, and like, would that be weird and kind of like uncomfortable? So I think I was a little just like trying, like, hey, you know, a little awkward with her, but she was so gracious and so kind and like very, you know, seemed to love the show. And yeah, I'm sure it was really weird for her, but she was a trooper. I don't know what I did.
I have to circle back because to earlier when we were talking about Les Mis, and when I was mentioning Broadway Kids and hearing Castle on the Cloud for the first time, because fun fact is she actually sung Castle on the Cloud on Broadway Kids' album, so that was the first time I ever heard that song.
Yeah, she did, because that on Broadway or on the tour or something like that.
Yeah, but I listened to all those Broadway Kids albums so many times, and it didn't connect to like a good while after I saw that movie that it was the same person.
That was the same person. Yeah, I know. It's so crazy.
Yeah. So I just had to throw that fun fact.
I love that. Yeah.
And then speaking of these Rockwell parodies, if you could turn any movie into a musical nowadays, what would it be?
Okay, well, I've always wanted to do Drop Dead Gorgeous as a musical.
Okay.
Not necessarily an UMPO parody, because to me, I think the fan base is a little niche. So like, I'm not sure like it would do very well, because like there aren't that many fans of it, but I think it would be a great musical with original music. Ooh. And actually, like 10 years ago, I think, I did a workshop of, they were going to do a musical of Sweet Valley High as a movie written by Diablo Cody. She wrote the script, and the music was by Brian Yorkey and Tom Kitt. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I did a workshop of it. I was like ensemble member, like 50, 100, you know. We did it at Universal, and it was like a musical pitch, I guess you could say, of the show. And I really hit it off with Tom Kitt. He was so nice. And I had mentioned to him Drop Dead Gorgeous would be such a great musical. And he was like, oh, I never saw it. And so at the end of the rehearsal and the workshop, I had a DVD of Drop Dead Gorgeous, and I gave it to him with a note saying, like, if you ever make a musical of this, like, I mean, you have to call me. And so anyway, I gave that to him. So we'll see if that ever happens, but
would die.
It's such a good musical. I mean, it's such a big cast, and it's all girls, and like, I think it would be great.
That'd be amazing. And Brian Yorkey and Tom Kitt are amazing. Genius.
Yeah. I have to say that movie never went anywhere. It never got made. Obviously, we would have heard about it. The music was so good. I wish I had it somewhere. Like, yeah. The music was so good. The script was so funny because Diablo Cody wrote it. It was like really dark and weird. But I don't know.
I mean, they're good at making hits. That's all I have to say.
I know. I don't know why that never got made, but maybe one day it would.
Yeah, well, I was going to say maybe one day. Yeah. And then, going back to Rockwell real quick, I asked what show was your favorite, but what show or role challenged you the most, do you think?
Let's see. What show or role challenged me? I mean, I think Bridesmaids was a really big challenge for me, because I think when I first got it, I didn't necessarily have the confidence that I could pull it off or carry a show like that. You know, even though I had like carried shows, like I was Annie when I was, 12, but like, it's so different. So I was really worried because and being that a lot of these shows are created in rehearsal, essentially, I was very afraid that like I wouldn't have any ideas, or like I wouldn't come up with the material. I did have a major meltdown on like the first preview before. Not my most glamorous moment, and I still apologize to Kate about it to this day.
Nerves, getting the best.
It was so much pressure, and like, like we'll say like these shows kind of like are a little thrown together at times, and like they really don't find their groove until like a week or two.
Yeah.
And so I remember that first preview of Bridesmaids, we were opening, and I was like, I'm not ready. Like, there were moments in the show that kind of weren't even like written yet. Like, and I just like lost my shit. But I told myself that I'm going to take care of myself. Like, and that's what I had to do, is I just had to be like, Natalie, you're going to take care of yourself on stage, and you're going to be fine. You're just going to allow, if something's not there, you're going to allow something to come out of your mouth, and it will be there. And then I did it. And then that night was really successful, and Kate was super happy, and Marissa was super happy. And then I was like, oh, okay, like I can handle this. I can do this. I was also getting married like 2 weeks later, which was like,
I remember that. Yeah, I think I remember that.
I had a little bit of stress, even though like our wedding was not a stressful experience. But I'm like that it was just like a lot was going on at the same time. I think. you know, it kind of, listen, you can't call yourself an actress if you haven't had a diva meltdown. So,
hey,
I had a diva meltdown.
It happens because a lot of funny things have happened on stage at Rockwell. What's the funniest thing that's happened during a show?
Oh gosh, the funniest? I'm trying to think. I mean, God, I have to like think. I have a really bad memory for things like that. I mean, well, I can't think of the funniest, but the only person that really ever made me crack on stage is Garrett Clayton.
Oh my God.
And I don't know what he does to me, but like, I cannot, he like will look you like dead in the eye, and like, it just would make me laugh so hard sometimes. And like, I just couldn't, and actually me and Ashley Argota like would always laugh at each other for some reason. Like, we just like, I don't know what it was. Like, she and I would just look at each other and just like start to laugh out of nowhere. We're like, we don't even know what's really funny right now, but like, those are the two people that would really make me ever crack on stage. But yeah, I don't know what the funniest thing. I mean, you know, we always had like our awesome like you know, mics going out, or like, you know.
Yeah, that happens. I think I have a video of you and Ashley just like staring at each other, cracking up, laughing online somewhere.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one, because I don't know what it is, like with her, like the two of us, like we would just like look at each other.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know even why we were laughing, but her and Garrett Garrett would just like give me this look, and when he was playing Travis usually in Clueless, and he would just kind of give me this he like would get this like dumb like blank look on his face as the character, and it would just make me laugh so hard. And so those are, you know,
he's ridiculous. There's so many, yeah, and the glitter every night too on stage in Clueless. Oh my God.
When he was playing Christian, I was like so like weirdly attracted to him.
I mean, like, he's throwing glitter everywhere.
I'm like, he's playing this like flamboyantly gay character, and yet I think it's so hot. Like, he went into like a full split, and I'm like, oh, that was so hot. Like, what? Anyway.
Did you ever have this conversation with him?
He might find this out if he watches this episode. No, I think I did tell him once. I was like, I don't know, when you're Christian, I'm like, take me, I'm yours. I told my husband, like, listen, I don't know what to tell you.
I might be in love with Garrett right now.
I'm only in love with him when he's playing Christian, extremely gay. So I don't know what that means about me, but something.
Hey.
Something. Ow, that was my elbow. I'm fine. This is a wall.
There was a wall behind me too.
Yeah.
Try not to elbow it. And then, who do you look up to in the entertainment industry?
Let's see. Well, I always looked up to my dad, and I still do. He is, to me, the funniest, most talentedest person ever. So yeah, I just, you know, I grew up watching him on TV and watching him as his daughter, and I just he's always been such a huge influence and inspiration. And yeah, so my dad, as cheesy as that is.
No, that's so sweet though. I love that. It makes sense though, too.
Yeah, he's the greatest. He's so cute. You know, and my dad, you know, he has MS, and so he's had it, or he was diagnosed when I was 18 months, so he's had it most of my life. So he really hasn't, like, you know, really been working as an actor for, you know, maybe the last 10 years. And, you know, I think also there's like a piece of me that feels this kind of need and want to carry on his legacy, because he wasn't able to physically work for after a certain point. And I think there's something about me is like, I want to carry it on for him and in his like honor.
And like make him proud.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. And then, what's your dream role? What would be your dream role on stage in the show?
Like a show that's already going on right now?
Yeah.
At Elle Woods. I still want to play Elle Woods.
Yes. I would love for that to come back.
I think like also I want to play Elle Woods now the way like I would play her now, because I think when I played her then I was, or when I was auditioning then, I was just kind of trying to be a carbon copy of what Laura Bell Bundy was. And I think like if I were to do it now, it would just be like such a different incarnation, and I would just be curious to see how that kind of panned out.
You would be able to like probably to make it your own and work on making it your own more.
Yeah, I think I would approach it the same way, where I'm like, well, I'm a fan of this thing, and then here's my spin on it. Yeah. So yeah, I still want to play Elle Woods.
Okay, I'm down. I want to see it so bad on stage. And then I mean, I know there's tons of productions, but like I would love to see it on like in like Broadway aspect on stage.
Totally.
And then we already covered this kind of, but what advice would you give to young performers in the industry?
My advice, would be, just be you unapologetically you, because there is no other, like, we're all little snowflakes in this world. And, I think the more we try to like fit into what we think people want us to be, the farther away we get from being any of it. And so I just feel like I think that's the advice I wish someone had told me, was like, so your manager told you were fat? Like, fuck that. Like, that's you. Like, love that, own that, like, be that thing, instead of then, being like, oh, well, what am I? And where do I fit in? And, what am I going to be in this industry? And like, the really thing is like, you can only be you in this industry, and I think that's what people are drawn to, because I think the parts that I've gotten is when I go in and I'm like comfortable and I'm myself, and not saying I'm not nervous, but like I'm comfortable and I'm myself, and I've made a specific choice, and there's just like no thought in my brain where I'm like, is this what they like? Like, is this working? Like, when I go in like that, it's like, go away. Like, like, but when I go in and I'm like, oh, hi, this is me. This is what I have to bring. And do you like it or not? And usually they're like, yeah, we like that. It's just crazy the way it works. I mean, it's kind of like dating. Like, just don't be desperate and weird.
Yeah. And be you.
Yeah, and just be you. And you're going to find someone who loves you for you. And thankfully, this industry is not a monogamous relationship. So you're going to just slut it up all over town working.
Yes.
I want a really slutty career.
And then I know that in some aspects the entertainment industry has kind of started to come back from all this going on, but the theater side of things hasn't yet. So based on, what's come back so far, how do you think the live theater aspect of entertainment will be different when it is able to come back?
I don't know. I wonder, I feel like with theater, like, there can't be an in-between. Like, I just don't think we can go back to where, like, yeah, we can have theater and, like, half the people, every other row is empty and every other seat is empty and all this stuff. I just think, like, to me, I don't think going back halfway would even work. And so I hope that when we do go back, it's, like, 100% all the way, and then it's like a huge celebration, and that people are going to want to, be patrons of the arts, and people, there's just going to be like an explosion of work, you know? I mean, that's kind of what I hope for it. Because yeah, I don't know if for me personally, even like we've been very strict with our quarantine at our house, mainly because my dad, and I see my dad, and you know, he's very susceptible. Like, I don't think I'd be comfortable going back even like to a halfway point. So I know it's just crazy, but the only thing I can think is like already the 6 months has kind of flown by. So,
Sure.
you know, maybe by next year, like, it's crazy to think this will have gone on that long, but I also think like it's gonna fly by before we know it.
Yeah, hopefully so. Because it has flown by.
It's so weird. It's like, it's flown by, and yet I feel like it's so slow. Like, it's just both things. I'm like, what? How's that possible? It can't be fast and slow at the same time. That makes no sense.
Yeah. And then, speaking of celebrating, what's the first thing you're going to do once quarantine ends?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I think I definitely am like feeling like, it's funny, I haven't gone to any restaurants. I haven't even gone to a grocery store. We get everything delivered.
Yeah.
I think my first stop would be Trader Joe's. Yeah.
You're like, I miss the inside of grocery stores.
I really actually miss Trader Joe's, like, to the point where I like bargain with my husband very frequently about trying to let me go to Trader Joe's. I'm like, come on. What if I just went? What if I just went really early in the morning, like in and out? What if I just went real quick? He's like, no.
Absolutely not. You lost it.
He's like, no, not going. I'm like, shit. But yeah, Trader Joe's, first stop, baby.
And then besides Trader Joe's, what would your dream vacation be after quarantine ends?
Yeah. I'm like, nope, just a tour of Trader Joe's across America. I want to go. Well, we were supposed to. My husband and I were planning a trip to go to Japan in May this year, and we obviously didn't go.
Yeah.
So that is still on the list of places to go.
Ooh, that'd be neat. That'd be a good place.
Yeah, it'd be cool. So yeah, Japan.
Well, and then lastly, to jump to the end a little bit. Since during this, I guess maybe downtime, what have you been doing anything that you'd want to promote, or whether it's anything entertainment wise or anything just like random like crafts or anything?
Let's see. Yeah, well, actually during the downtime I've been doing a lot of writing recently, which has been cool. I did work on my one-woman show. I got a little burnt out on it just because I think theater like ended, and I was like, what's the point of this? But one day maybe that will be a thing that I could do. Yes. I've actually written the show, so it's like ready to go. I mean, I need some notes, but you know, it's definitely like I completed it. I also wrote a short film recently, and I don't know if like it's feasible to make, during this time, but it might be, and I think that's something I'd like to do. And then I've been taking a class, a writing class that I'm doing as well. So I've been like trying to stay creative and like, create my own work for potential future. And, if I don't know what will ever come of any of it, but at least it's kind of, keeping me busy at the moment.
Have you talked about writing things for like Rockwell?
Yeah, Kate asked me if I ever would be interested in writing one of the UMPO shows, but I don't know if I have that in me. I'm like, it just is a lot of work. So I'm not sure if that would be something I'd ever really do. But actually, Jared, my husband, he writes, and he kind of was like wants to write one. And it was funny, it was before Ty Blue came out with his Titanic one.
Oh.
And Jared was thinking of a musical parody of Titanic, but too late. You snooze, you lose.
And then would you ever think of taking something to the East Coast that you write?
Yeah, I think I have always a little fantasy in the back of my brain that I will do theater in New York. I think when I started writing my one-woman show about being on the Legally Blonde show, I think part of me kind of envisions, doing it here and doing it there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we'll see. Then part of me was like, maybe I should film it somehow, but I don't know.
Virtual stuff is on right now.
We'll see. We'll see if all of a sudden I get this hair up my butt and I'm like, I gotta do this now. Sometimes that happens to me.
Yes. Well, if that happens, and to keep following what you're doing and for future projects that you're doing, where can people follow you on social media?
I am Natalie _Lander on Instagram and Twitter, and I started TikTok. TikTok is a dark world that I don't think I want to be involved in.
Getting on that trend.
It's so weird. But yes, I'm Natalie _Lander across all platforms.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for joining me on this and talking with me about theater and about entertainment industry and everything.
No, thanks. It's so good to see you. I mean,
right.
I feel like I take for granted, I would get to see you at Rockwell and see you around. And so it's so it's really nice to see you again and actually get to chat, because I also feel like when I see you, we're always moving around.
Exactly. And to get to talk about someone who also goes through what I do with the whole age thing.
Yeah, I mean, girl, you look so young.
I mean, you do. So
it's better that way, I'm sure. But I totally know how kind of annoying it is.
Yeah. And it's people think my sisters are my older sisters, and they're not.
Oh my God. I'm sure they love that.
They love that. I'm guys, I'm 3 years older than you.
Yeah, what the heck?
Yeah, it's sorry, and they love that. But yeah. Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video, or if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!